where you can fit. When our families came in, so we are all there before we could manage any place to be as well.
So the discussions with Abacha came to nothing as far as restoring legality in Gambia was concerned.
Yes.
Did you go anywhere else?
We went to Guinea-Conakry, and then to meet. This were not all like one trip, so sometimes we wait for a while, few months. You know, we went to America as well. Went to meet Kofi Annan, UN.
Can you tell us about that one?
It was this were like all, if I say, colleagues that he had a very good personal, interpersonal relationship with. Kofi Annan, I think when we are there, we met Dr. Walindau, you know, because at that time in the early 95, these people were not still settled. You know, they were still not that settled because these appointments were going in and out, you know, who will be where, or whether are they going to stay 2 years or 2 months or 3 months. I don't think they were settled around themselves. I think, I'm not sure, but I thought at the time Walindau must have been approached. But then he came all the way to meet Sir Dawda at the, I think it was before Kofi Annan meeting, that to register his disapproval of these people approaching him. He said he's not interested, giving his interpersonal relationship with Sir Dawda, what transpired. And Sir Dawda was like, you know, anything else is better than these people. You know, if you can, and then this will be handed over to you, certainly. But no, he said, no, he wouldn't have it. We don't want any to hear it from somewhere else. You know, you have few scenarios like that. You know, so we met Kofi Annan, the same thing. You know, so it's just, they just want to be informed regarding the situation, basically, and then some financial institution like the World Bank at the time, because when this particular day of the coup, my understanding was the day the Gateway project was meant to be, the check was going to be issued, because it found Sarah Jangha there that particular day. You know, so they will be very much interested in the financial situation in the country. So we felt that we had to meet those institutions and brief them regarding what is happening.
Essentially, Mr. Kasama, when they lifted the anchor at Banjul port, the Jawara government ended there and then.
Yeah, there and then, yeah.
Yes, you have continued to look into the situation as to what happened in Gambia. What were your findings?
My findings were, this wasn't the first time this particular coup was hatched. It was earlier on in April.
This particular coup?
Well, it was a follow-up, because they are the same players still. They are the same players still, and this was in March, April of the same year. You know, of which I understand Sambaba kind of got wind of this coup, and then he reported it. And somehow, Minister of Defense prevailed on his dismissal as circulating a false rumor. But as it happens, you know, this was the one which was meant to be executed later, which happened in July, because the same players, I wish you can find the report somewhere, who were kind of implicated in that particular report, was the one that was to feature again in this particular coup of July 1994.
And who were those players?
Yeah, well, the Minister of Defense was implicated in it, as it was basically that it was organized around them. This involved around some senior officers, it was alleged, and then to the level that they had even received envelopes, money, and that there were meetings held like in Tendaba, in Sukuta, So there were layers of responsibilities assigned. And then to this end, Dada was recruited. That's why I said it was found that he was promised citizenship. And then had he, whoever the head is, had succeeded, so that he would stay. He didn't want to, he was hell-bent on not going back to Nigeria.
And Mr. Kasama, of course, you would be asked, what is your basis of knowledge?
Well, this is where I said the person who would be a first-hand information on this would be Pastor Lajang, because he was involved in the traveling. And then if he's here, and I understand you've contacted him, at what point, any other point, he'll be able to clarify, because he has a personal involvement, and then as far as the personal knowledge of who received what, from whom. And then, like he said, thorough Jaune's sacking from the president's office by his own account was ordered in person by the Minister of Defense, to remove him from State House, which was all part of the plot, to have his men in place. Yeah.
Well, you have not answered the question about your basis of knowledge. Is it hearsay, or is it a first-hand account? Of
no, he told me, he informed me, so I would say for him it's a first-hand account, because he got involved.
But for you, it's a second-hand account.
Secondary information, yes. So that's why I say allegedly.
And of course, you would agree that this is yet another theory,
yes,
about coup, and those coups never happened.
Yes.
And tell me whether the 4 lieutenants who carried out the July 22nd coup d'etat were also allegedly part of that so-called group that was to carry out a coup in April or March.
No, they were not, but they're still within the same principle when it comes to the second coup as well.
Can you explain that?
Yeah.
Explain that. You said it's still within the same principle.
Yeah.
Basically
our Ministry of Defense, so this is where both have, in terms of having meetings, in terms of receiving money, yes, from the Vice President, as was alleged. So this is
who was giving money to who and for what?
They claim that it comes from the Vice President to Yajame, and therefore for the 4 of them. Not only the 4, but I also understand that there are some senior officers who are also involved as well.
But of course, it is patently clear that the Vice President and the Minister of Defense received no benefit, at least outwardly. Yeah. He received no benefit whatsoever from the coup. Yeah, correct?
Well, that's why I said allegedly.
And if anything, he lost mightily, correct?
Yeah, well, so sometimes you don't have the intended consequences when you start something else, because you never know the nature of the beast. You started something else. What is going to amount to or result to may not necessarily be to your own design.
But that is speculation under the circumstances. It's speculative, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it doesn't still negate the fact that if there were eyewitnesses like I myself and some of my colleagues, they are soldiers. Had it been a court sitting, who would be prepared to come in person to testify.
Well,
so they are the ones. That's what I'm saying. They are the ones who were very vehemently sure of these particular connections and the meetings that have happened. Like even in Minte's account of the Nigerian officers bringing these junior officers to them, showing them virtually the route and how to go about it, something like that. If Dada's connection is certified, that way they will understand why these 4 would be having regular meetings at their mess while they're showing them exactly what to do. I'm sure when my other colleague comes in, I'm just fleshing out the bones, but he will put the meat onto it more than he's more conversant with this particular scenario vis-a-vis this four or any link to the Ministry of Defense.
It is interesting, but by no means compelling in terms of the quality of the evidence. You agree?
Yes, absolutely.
So I have no further questions, Mr. Chair. I cede the floor to the commissioners to ask the questions that they wish. And afterwards, Mr. Kasama, you'd be given an opportunity to say a few words, and we keep it short. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Council, and thank you very much, Mr. Kasama. Any questions from members of the Commission? Commissioner Kinte, you have the floor.
Commissioner Kinte, I remember you said something ridiculed you. Shehu Sabali lost his relative and went on funeral. It appeared if he would be so early at State House by 7,
yes,
that would be too early, for example, to have been there. Yeah. Yeah, it was possible within his scope at the time that he could use Farafenye, even influence the ferry to walk up to 10 so that he crosses. But indeed, in validating your point, if he had done that, and these things were already unripe, the rumors and indicators, I thought he would have first met Jawara than any other thing in the morning. Yeah. Not to meet the Americans and the exercise team. You don't talk about exercise when already your house is under fire. You first settle that. So even if he had succeeded in coming, like your indication could have been that he may not have gone at all. Yeah. Let's validate that he had gone. Even if he had gone and come back, the first assignment should have been, one, the debriefing that he failed to give the president, he accomplished, and two, the rumors that are already on the ground, because then he must have been aware that the previous night or the previous evening, some soldiers were disarmed and are put on surveillance and so on. The president should have been briefed. This should have been the first priority of a vice president, even if he was not a minister of defense. Much more that he was at the time the minister of defense. So yes, that one I wouldn't call it negligence. Maybe it was a pre-plan and a wrongly managed welfare. Yeah. What's your opinion?
Exactly. You know, most of us were scratching our heads as to, like you said, you know, the how early you can be in office, and anybody, any normal person, regarding if especially the security of the country is at threat. You know, wherever you are, the first thing you will do, even before you even get to the president, you will call him and let him know, definitely, I mean, this is in the offing, you know, what plans do we have, because you are here on the ground, give him advance notice so they can also put some security measures, countermeasures in place, and then to prepare. But like you said, you know, the exercise itself alone, you know, which the American ambassador at the time was trying to find out why it was moved from Mandinari and then to be an attack on Banjul via Denton Bridge. He couldn't understand that. And he instructed his counselor to find this from the PAM sect to no avail. After several attempts, the only answer he got, yeah, it was approved by the vice president, which is another way of just laying the opportunity for soldiers in the guise of having to have an exercise he doesn't know about, to find a way to attack Banjul. So the whole thing, you know, only him can come and clarify, you know, the situation, because it's all dubious, to put it mildly. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions I would want clarification on. The first is, did former President Jawara speak to you about any possible motivation for Senegal's refusal to allow him to come back to power? That's the first. The second is one of the witnesses who came here also mentioned that if Jawara had stepped down in '92, when he promised in one of the rallies that he was going to step down, it would have been different. Would that be something you would agree with? And how did that really play in power politics within the cabinet?
Okay. Regarding the Senegalese situation, the same question was put to him at Marlborough House by Sir Anthony Goodenough of the Foreign Office. Why Senegalese attitudes toward him. Well, he only gave one sentence. He just said, I was defending the national interest of my country, referring to the Confederation. What transpired, what he was defending, he never elaborated. I was saying, and they said, what's the problem? What's the problem with him, between you two? He just said, I was defending the national interest of my country. And that's all he said regarding that. As far as the 1992, where he was going to leave, I thought it started from there because it was about succession of power. We've seen across the border when Senghor left, he had an heir apparent that he nominated. But Sadauda has always been of the opinion that this conversation I once had with him was if he nominates somebody and the party doesn't like that person, his influence is making that person to be elected. And he become a poor leader because the nation and the party are not behind that person. He said it's natural when party meet, a leader should be elected. Not everybody is expected to agree to that. But whoever emerges as a leader, he expected the party to rally behind. At that time, after that incident, also, Aji Fatou Sallah and Aji Safindao were spearheading the return of SM Diba to PPP. I remember a political bureau meeting where there was a heated argument as to what SM Diba, if and when he comes, should be given. Some said by virtue of his position as the head of the party, should be given something substantial. Some said he has to come and then, prove his loyalty to the party. So I remember that particular, very, very heated at the political bureau. I'm just, like I said, soldier, I'm not a politician, but I just for somebody, I'm observing from at a distance. So you could see probably the rationale behind, even if Sadauda has nominated someone different, and this particular person has this means, it wouldn't have stopped a coup. Because if their personal ambition is either by hook or crook, I want to be the leader of this country, they will use whatever means, if it's available to them. And then what the army was at the time was infested by surrogates, that they selected, implanted them into the army. Some things that I warned against. I came to understand at a cabinet meeting at the inception of the army. But then this has been going on, which he became clear after that 1992 incident. So I'm not sure whether appointing someone would have prevented, if it is not the person who wants to be, wasn't elected to leave. So with or without that, some people have some ulterior motives, and they had the means, they will do it.
Final question. Did Sadauda have any retirement plan? What was his?
That was his final, that's definitely, to me, that was his final term. He wasn't going to stand and all that. That was by after the 1992, the next one is going to contest the election, he was going to leave. And that's why all this movement of SM Diba was, because they all realize an opportunity now, he wants to come back to the party.
Sirif Mustafa Diba.
Yes, Sirif Mustafa Diba of NCP, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, Imam C, sorry.
Thank you, Gassama. We thank you for the clarifications you've given. We thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. There are no further questions, Council. Please proceed.
The witness was asked a question by Commissioner Kinte, and I just want to ask one follow-up question to that. It's fact a question I intended to ask earlier, but for some reason it escaped me. A lot of fingers are now being pointed by this testimony to the Minister of Defense at the time. But I have a few questions on that. Do you know whether Keba Sise, the DG of NSS, do you know whether he briefed the Minister of Defense at the time about what was going on?
No, I have no idea that he's going to brief him. Like you said, we're still talking about the follow-up thing. With my conversation with Daba Marina, the late Daba Marina, was Keba knew, he knew everything as far as this thing is concerned. Of course, if my colleague comes to testify, you would know exactly from where this statement is coming from. He will put more.
I agree with that. That is an important piece of information.
Yeah.
But the question is, do you know whether Keba Sise did brief the Minister of Defense about what was going on at the time?
No, I didn't see him going there. He never mentioned going to the Minister of Defense to go and brief him. I've never seen him going towards that end. I never saw them together as well.
Would it be out of the ordinary that as Minister of Defense, he would know that extraordinary things or disturbances were happening in the military barracks, correct?
Yes, because it's his whole responsibility. He is in charge of the entire defense of the country.
So therefore, the fact that he knew that something was happening in the barracks would not be surprising, correct?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kazama, would you have any concluding remarks to make?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Some of my colleagues, I listened to them, their testimonies here. And then this theory was put forward that their intention was 3 months, and then they would just hand over to civil rule. Following the the thread of comments around social media and everything, some people think that's a kind of a laudable thing. I always say a function of intellect in anything, is advisory. It's advisory because you have the data, that you assess the data, and that will inform your decision to act. And then if these people are, some of them portray some level of intelligence, if they scouted around the world, as in Africa in particular, I don't see you will see a success story of a coup d'etat anywhere. If you go beyond all the pomp and ceremony and all the rhetoric, and you go to the specificity of their policy positions, by and large, they end up wrecking the economy of that particular country. Not talking about the havoc they wreak on the families and the lives of the citizens of those countries. So to try to dress it in such a nice way as our intention was only 3 months, to me, it's a complete defect in there. If they had any modicum of intelligence, anybody tells you, even if it's for a day, because you are carrying out an act whose consequences, the consequences you cannot control, you don't know where you're going to, and then the people you are going to put in power anyway, they did not have the mandate. To me, it is the most cowardly act, because you find yourself, you cannot talk to the people and convince them. If you want to be a politician, talk to the people and convince them that you want them to vote for you and elect you to be in a position of leader by your agenda, by your ideology. But the thing that you have to do it by the power of, a barrel of a gun, to me, I think it's very, it's the wrong thing to do in any circumstances. We should be categorical. We should not even entertain it. We should not try to sanitize it or even try to rationalize it. And then these are people, because I've seen some people who say, oh, they are heroes. Whenever I see that, I feel sad. Because some very good soldiers, lost their lives. I'm just reminded when we send soldiers to Liberia, they were young. Excuse me, sir. Yeah. I'm okay. I'm okay. Just a few minutes. Okay.
We'll suspend the meeting for about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Gassama, welcome back.
My apologies.
Are you able to proceed?
Yes, please. My apologies for that. It's just that we had a very close bonding. You know, in my time, even my 5 years away from the camp, it was like I never left. You know, I was going to say when we sent our soldiers to Liberia, they didn't question the rationale behind sending them, given that our sub-region was under threat from the intelligence they gathered at the time about what Gaddafi was meant to unleash in the sub-region. The Anglophone-speaking West African countries took it upon themselves and then to go to aid another country, with the exception of France. Guinea-Conakry. You know, these were young people, very brave. They never said we are inexperienced or anything else. They went, baptism of fire, literally. You know, they excelled in executing their duties without fear. You know, to come back and be subjected to your fellow Gambian as a friend, to meet a kind of treatment that they have undergone. It's very sad. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about them. You know, we don't want to see that ever happening in this country again. We all want to forgive. We all say it's the Gambian character, the Maslaha culture. But I remember one thing Claudius said in Hamlet when he was asking for forgiveness. He asked this question: how can God forgive him? When he coveted the crown, he got it. He coveted the king's wife, he got it. He coveted power, and he got it. And you said you want forgiveness. By that, I mean those people who are still in position of influence within our current government, having meted this kind of either by torture, as the Quran says, torture is even worse than murder, and to see them still serving, to me, that's not something that's going to encourage reconciliation. We want to forgive, but we cannot forgive and then expect you to carry on the benefits of what you've gained by virtue of the position you hold now, when the rest of these families, victims' families, are languishing and they are struggling. And then we say, because of our Maslaha culture, forgive them. And they still maintain that position within the government, whether here or abroad or in any diplomatic career. I think, to me, that is wrong. That is something that we don't have to wait for the completion of this particular commission. That one, at the bare minimum, should be relieved of their duties. You know, we're not accusing, we're not saying try them. At one time, these were our brothers, very good brothers at that. We want to be able to say, we forgive you, we meet you, you know, but you cannot come and commit all those things and you still want to maintain those positions, especially within the army itself. You know, I think that one is something that definitely the whole nation need to speak out on that particular one. Okay. The other thing I wanted to address was, this goes to our religious colleagues here. What made us all sit down here looking after the human rights violation issues, or be it the Constitution, or be it to my, be it our sovereignty. To me, to my understanding, we owe a lot to our religious scholars we had before, starting from either from Al-Kindi, Ibn Sina, Imam Malik, or Imam Ghazal, Ibn Rusud. On the Christian side, you have St. Ambrose, St. Augustine, St. Thomas, St. Aquinas. You know, these were all influential philosophers that came to shape the society. Even people like, through their scholastic training, gave us what we are now trying to fight for, either human rights or to establish our own sovereignty. And I think what had happened here, our religion, they are meant to be our internal moral legislatures, in showing not only philosophically, but in showing be our moral compass. But what had happened in the 22 years, it's very sad to say, we've seen people do certain things bad, and then we excuse it in the form of, how would I call it, causal determinism. That's something that God has ordained. You know, we have to decide either to be a nation of laws, you know, anybody, there's a point of responsibility where you must be responsible for your actions. You cannot excuse everything to either biological determinism, as I've seen some people do. It happens X place, Y place, so therefore it's okay, or somehow alluding to that if it happens here. Or it's something ordained by God. We all know that's not true. You know, I think we need our religious leaders, these two great religions, you know, to step forward. It might not be popular, but anytime something is wrong in society, for them to speak out. Okay. To our politicians, Rome was not built in a day. You know, in Europe, they had about 100 years war. In Britain, about 35 years war. And still 2 years we have Brexit. We couldn't get it right. We don't expect any political party to come and get everything right at the first go. What we must never try to do, to have a shortcut by thinking that by influencing the army to help you in your own project, is your quickest way to success. That's always, and to me, a route for disaster. And it will take, like Honorable MC Cham said here, 50 years or so, you set back to recover. You know, the emotional scar alone, you know, will take, God knows, decades for us to recover from. You know, politicians should be mindful of what they say. People who join the army, for us, we never coveted anything from anybody. It's just to serve your nation. That's all we wanted to do. Because we're talking about sector reforms. You know, buying the loyalty of the army, it never works in any country. In fact, statistics have shown the more you spend to buy the upper echelon of the army, the more likelihood you'll be overthrown. Because at some point, the highest bidder will come. Army is meant to believe in your values, in your standards, in the ethos of the country, selflessly serving without looking for any riches. This is what I know to be the army. I think I'll end it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gassama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kazama, for those very wise words. And a special thanks, really, to you for having traveled thousands of miles to come and assist this commission in creating a historical record of what happened in 22 years, 1994 to 2017. Your contribution covers the phase that sets the context in which those 22 years of violations really happened. It's a vital part of our exercise, and we want to thank you enormously for coming all the way here to testify before this commission. If there are no questions, thank you very much indeed. See what?
No further questions for the witness, Mr. Chairman, except that I would wish to put in the list of those who are on board the ship as an exhibit to be exhibit number 25, 0025. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, we add this document on the record.
Thank you. Request granted.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, indeed. And the Commission is not meeting tomorrow. We have other functions to carry out, but we will meet here again. The next public hearing would be on Tuesday, Monday being a public holiday, Independence Day. If there are no further questions or points to make, we would end the day today and wish you all happy Independence Day and a good weekend. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.